the final Housing and Economic Development Committee meeting to order. And I wanted to first open it up to public comment. I know of several emails, but also Katrina, I think that there was someone who asked to be added.
Yes, Chris, I just let her in.
Great. Hi, Chris. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine. I'm sorry. Someone there did something. I heard you call the meeting to order, and then I was bumped off of Zoom, and then I was in a period of time where there was a silence. So if you said something in that period of time, I don't know what you said.
Simply that we are opening the meeting and inviting people to speak on privilege of the floor. And you are the one person who's here right now. So if you would like to speak, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, well, I have timed this and I will try to keep it in 3 minutes. It may go just a little over that, but please do have patience with me. Thank you.
Sure.
So, thank you for allowing me to speak in support of this important good government reform. I've maintained a very active interest in local economic development in general and IDA policies in particular since completing my Cornell master's thesis on 20 years of IDA policy in Monroe County in 2003. I have actively lobbied the legislature locally for the needed reforms as well on many occasions over the years, often in tandem with my neighbors in the building trades unions. While I'm 100% behind having a labor seat at the table, there are many who will speak to that aspect, so I'd like to use my time to focus on the good government reform nature of this proposal rather than on the need for labor to have a voice on the IDA. Specifically, I'd like to address the tremendous importance of righting a long-standing wrong in terms of good government policy and IDAs. For many, many, many years since Tim Joseph chaired the legislature, the chair of the Tompkins County Legislature has appointed a majority of the IDA governing board from among the legislators themselves. This was then and still is now contrary to accepted best practices for economic development agencies. Every comptroller audit since then has made mention of the poor practice and recommended ending it. I am so thankful now we have the opportunity to do so. I want to be very careful to note that I've seen no evidence of corruption or undue influence and am making no such allegations. However, the best practice of keeping legislator votes to something less than a controlling majority of an IDA board is perhaps the most important anti-corruption practice available to a community. Economic development agencies are by nature prone to corruption, and not just governmental corruption, of course. My inquiries with Tim Joseph about what the perceived positive aspect of this practice of having 4 legislators sit on and dominate the IDA resulted in years ago a statement of generalized distrust of others, and especially others with business knowledge, to watch out for the community's interests. I find that view, while well-meaning, to be unconvincing. No entity should have a controlling majority on a board that approves tax abatements. It's an important check and balance mechanism. Again, no allegation of improper actions is being made, but surely it is beyond simple to understand that public officials can be corrupted, and it is important to ensure that the structure of governmental bodies be organized to mitigate that possibility. It is the limitations to too much power that are embedded in the structure that can help us to feel secure as community members that morally reprehensible or unfair actions will be prevented. If we depend on the moral sense of individual legislators, all will be well until and unless one or more legislators are deficient there. Our recent experience with the powers of the US presidency are illustrative. Too much power concentration is no difficulty until an individual or partisan group seeks to push the envelope on the use of that power. Then we find ourselves wishing that we had built better checks and balances into the system. I think that it is important to not wait until something bad happens. The legislature should not have a controlling majority of the IDA board, regardless of what interests the other members represent. It was and continues to be a bad practice to appoint 4 legislators to the IDA, as the comptroller's office or any academic with knowledge of best practices in economic development will concur. I suspect that those of you who may be inclined to resist this change will focus on the qualifications of organized labor to represent all labor and such. But the most important question for any legislator not willing to vote for this resolution has nothing to do with that. It has to do with whether or not they are ready to extend in January, when the IDA appointments are made, the same wrong-headed consolidation of power that has existed, with its increased risk of corruption, or will protect our community from corruptible overconcentrations of power instead. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate your comments. I have several other comments that I have been forwarded to read into the minutes. One of them is from Teresa Alt regarding the composition of the Tompkins County IDA. The resolution concludes, quote, resolved that the chair of the legislature appoint 3 legislators and a representative of local organized labor, with a suggestion that the representative be from the building trades. I believe that this formula is supposed to replace the 4 county legislators currently being appointed. However, this leaves unclarity about the remaining 3. I would certainly suggest that the formula for all 7 IDA members be made explicit in the resolution. That said, I would suggest no more than 3 from the county legislature, 1 from the building trades, 1 from other labor organizations, 1 from a municipal legislature and or school board, and 2 at large, probably from the business or business organizations. At present, 2 IDA members, Tavares and Sigler, are also members of the board of IAED, which is paid to staff the IDA. This suggests a conflict of interest. I would urge a provision that no one from the board or staff of the staffing organization serves simultaneously on the IDA. So that was from Teresa Alt. I also have one from Todd Brower. I am sorry, Todd, if I am mispronouncing your name. Katrina, there was one from Dave Marsh that was sent on December 2nd. And he asked to have that read as well. And for the life of me, I have not been able to find that one. So if you have that one also should be read.
We'll look for it really quick.
Excuse me?
I'll check for it. I don't remember getting that one, but I can see if Kathy has it quick.
Great, thank you. So I will read this one from Todd. Thank you for the opportunity to address all of you on the important resolution to appoint a labor union representative on the IDA committee. This labor representative appointee will be a voice for all local labor and a constant advocate to support all workers living in Tompkins County. This is not a union or non-union issue. It is about supporting the people that live in our county, pay taxes in our community, raise their families in our community, shop and buy in our community, and volunteer in our community. We are your family, friends, and neighbors. The business community is represented on the IDA committee. With their representation, they bring their valuable experiences, concerns, and opinions to the whole committee. Why not have a representative from a labor union on the IDA committee? They too will bring their valuable experience, concerns, and opinions to the IDA committee as well. A true committee should represent all sides to get the best outcome for everyone living in our county. In closing, why not have a voice for local labor on the IDA community? I urge you to please adopt this resolution before you to appoint a labor union representative to the IDA committee for the benefit of all workers living in Tompkins County. So that is the second one that I have. Katrina, were you able to find the one from Dave Marsh?
And I do not have it. I just spoke with Kathy and she said that the only one that she received that was requested to be read into the record was from Teresa All.
Okay. Well, if I do find that one, at some point I will read it during this conversation, but notwithstanding, I think that those are all of the public comments that I have.
Can I ask Ann, Anna, Deborah came late. Can I do have a written version. Can I send that to you or her at an email address where she would have access to it?
Yes, if you send it to ccovert, CCOVERT at tompkins-co.org, that would go to our county legislative clerk, Kathy Covert, and she can share it with the legislature, or you can send it to simply legislature at tompkins-co.org. Also, Chris, this is recorded, so anyone who is coming late can catch the beginning.
Oh,
so
then there's no need. Okay, I just thought she might want it now, but that's okay.
Wonderful.
Thanks, Chris.
So I have the email from Dave Marsh, and I will read this. This simply says, first, I thank each of you for voting to support a project labor agreement, PLA, for the Tompkins County Airport Expansion and Renovation Project. While that project was completed almost a year ago, the use of a PLA at the airport assured at least 75% of the construction labor came from each trade's local union hiring hall. This example of a partnership between the county and the local union trades is a success for local workers that can now be strengthened by the appointment of a local union representative to the Tompkins County IDA board. When the IDA board members evaluate the merit of a developer's project that is asking for substantial tax incentives and the project only produces a few long-term jobs, example, a housing development or solar farm, is the most relevant job creation portion of the project. The construction jobs, discussed in detail as they should be, having a local union representative on the IDA board would be very advantageous during such discussions to help maximize the number of local construction jobs each IDA project creates and long-term jobs. Perhaps this is one of the many reasons the Broome County and Chemung County have a local union representative position on their IDA board. If the IDA's mission is to create as many local jobs as possible, then this appointment is a step in the right direction. Thank you for your consideration. Sincerely, Dave Marsh. So those are the ones that I got that were asked to be read. And I want to make one change to the agenda. And then I want to just bring this up early in the meeting, and then I'll get to the chair's report. I want to note that the resolution changing the composition of the Tompkins County Industrial Development Agency to include 3 county legislators and a representative of organized labor is currently listed under the Ithaca Area Economic Development portion of this agenda. It should never have been put under IAED, as this is an independent discussion about the IDA. I want to make sure that everybody is aware IAED is contracted to administer, staff the IDA, but this is not an IAED issue. So I just want to note that, and item C on number 9 should be removed out as a separate issue underneath the heading of TCIDA. Going back, I don't see that we have Ellie Pfeffer on this Zoom. I had offered to give her a few minutes to just give us an update on progress. Last month, we had the workforce, the green workforce report, a draft of that presented as an initial There was a significant amount of feedback that was given to Ellie and the case board. This is a report specifically from the case board. Obviously, this is something we as a legislature can give feedback for, we can give advice to, we can ask for changes, but ultimately this is a report from an advisory board that we can take or leave as we see fit as a legislative body. Since the last meeting, she has contacted many of the companies locally that are in the green infrastructure arena. She has contacted every member of the IDA and interviewed them, although I understand, Mike, she has not successfully connected with you, but is open to doing that. Mike, I don't know if you're there. Yes, I see you looking.
Yeah, she reached out to me yesterday, so I'll get back to her.
Wonderful. I understand she's had other conversations and there have been subsequent long lists of people that she should contact. She's continuing to contact people. I want to remind everybody that this is free labor that we're getting from a volunteer who is doing a significant amount of work for this board and for the legislature. And what was presented last time was a draft. And she will be coming back to the case board with an updated version after all of the changes that she will be making and considerations from all of the subsequent interviews. And then it will come back again to the legislature for review. So that is my only update. And I see that she says that she did not get a link. But that is her update. So moving on to committee member reports of any liaison appointments. I do not see any hands raised. I see Martha raising her hand. Martha?
Thank you, Anna. I just wanted to let people know that I think this happened since our last meeting, that the low-income housing tax credit awards for the summer round were announced just about a couple of weeks ago. And Immaculate Conception, the INHS project at Immaculate Conception was awarded, the only award in the southern tier. So they are getting their tax credits, and we had, I think, 3 applications altogether in there from Tompkins County, but INHS got the award. The next round is now open. They're calling that one the fall 2020 round, and that's deadline is January 13th for those. So congrats to INHS.
Wonderful. Thank you, Martha, for the update. And I'm looking for, I skipped minutes approval of November 17th, 2020. Can I have someone move those? Mike moves them. Annie seconds them. Did anybody have any comments? Martha?
Yes, I sent a note. Oh boy, did I write it here? I sent a note to Kathy and copied you. Okay, on the, I'm sorry, it's packet page 10. I'm sorry, let me get it for a second. There were 2 manifest things, but packet page 10, the 3rd paragraph from the bottom. Ms. Pfeffer said she would do research into labor, into how much labor was used, and I wanted to suggest that it should say how much local labor was actually used by the IDAs cited in the report, just to make it clear. And then at the last part of that, she said she also wants a way for everyone who wants to retrofit, where I'm saying that I also want a way for everyone who wants to retrofit their house to be able to do that, but that will take a lot of money. Is there a proposal for where that should come from? So Kathy said that ought to be articulated in the minutes, you know, as an.
For me anyway. Mike, or no, I wasn't the primary. Mike was the primary. Mike and Annie. Those are manifest, yes?
I'm sorry, yeah, my internet kicked out, so I'm back. I basically missed that, whatever she said.
It was just clarification language.
I'm sure it's fine. Thanks.
And with me.
Thank you.
Great. So let's move on to vote on the minutes. Mike,
Yes.
Annie,
Yes.
Martha,
Yes.
and I am a yes, and Henry is recused, so that is unanimous. Thank you, everyone. So getting back to the order of our agenda, County Administrator's Report. There is a resolution correcting for omitted 2019 transfers from the General Fund A to the Community Development CD Fund ID 9777. I do not see Jason here on the call, but can I have someone move that? Annie moves. Mike seconds. It seemed rather straightforward. I don't know, Katrina, was there any comment about administration coming to discuss this at all?
They were sent the link, but I haven't heard from anybody.
Did anybody have any questions or comments about this? Are there any concerns, or we don't understand it, or do we feel it's pretty straightforward and we can move forward to a vote? Martha?
Yeah, this is more than $250,000. I don't understand how that was missed. I mean, it's supposed to come to budget next Monday. So I suppose if we just move it on out of here, then we'll get that question answered at budget. But I'm kind of shocked nobody from finance or administration is here right now.
Yeah, I am checking in. If you give me 30 seconds.
I mean, you know, you're right on time for this part of the budget, it's part of the meeting, so.
I agree, Martha. So maybe Anna can get somebody. It would be nice to have some more explanation on this.
If I may, there's no reason why it has to be considered at this time in the meeting. Given everything that's going on, admin may be tied up with something else. Why don't you just move on along and give them a chance to show up later?
Yeah, I'm just going to check. Jason, he is presenting at NISAC right now.
Hi, Anna.
Hi, Amy. Would you like to discuss the resolution that is on the HED agenda about the budget adjustment for the Community Housing Development Fund, the General Fund 2?
You want to tell her that she's live on the meeting too, Anna?
I actually have that in front of me. I was just picking up as I was on another call. I don't have that in front of me. Discuss that at this point.
Okay. I see that there is something, yeah, it says Amy has to attend a meeting regarding vaccinations.
Rick Snyder?
Okay, so so we will push this to the end of the meeting and hope that he is able to attend after his NISAC presentation.
Did you try Rick Snyder?
Thanks, Amy. So there is an email that I am just seeing from Jason that says that he has his presentation. It should only take an hour. He will try and jump on after his presentation to HED. So I'm going to bump this to the end of the meeting. Is that all right with everybody? Table it temporarily?
Yes.
Thanks, Annie. So the next item, approval of bylaws of the Strategic Tourism Planning Board, and that is ID 9739. Can I have someone move that? Martha moves, Mike seconds. Hi, Nick, welcome.
Hi. Can give you a little background on this change to the bylaws.
That would be great.
Yeah. So the STPB Membership and Bylaws Committee started talking about a change earlier in the fall, recognizing a couple of factors. One sort of a novel due to the pandemic, and the other one more long-term. In terms of recruiting members at this time to fill vacant positions, this is just a real challenge, I think, in terms of finding folks that are interested and willing to take that on, and then in addition, onboarding them. So I think there was, that was one factor I think that played into their thinking, that they wanted to look at the bylaws and how they could help that situation. And then the other thing that came up in the discussion was that there are really some members on STPB who would like to serve longer and seem like they only really hit their stride in the, maybe years 4 or 5 or 6, and kind of once they figured out how the system works, how the STPB and the county and the CVB all sort of work together, and all the players in this community. So there's a pretty steep learning curve, I think, for this board. As an advisory board, there's actually, a relatively large amount of learning, I think, for most folks as they come on board. So this extending the term limits to 3 terms instead of 2 was a way to allow those members who, kind of get caught up by the years 2, 3, or 4 to have a longer period of having to be able to serve in that capacity. Of course, it's also voluntary. Of course, if any member wants to not renew for a term, that's certainly fine. And I think that the idea was that some members 1 or 2 terms is enough, and that they'll rotate off as they see fit. So this was a way for the STPB to kind of retain some of the talented members who want to go a little longer without, making it sort of an indefinite period as well. So it'd still be a 3-year, 3-year terms would be the limit. And after that point, members would be rotated off. In addition, and I'm not sure, I'm kind of clicking through the meeting here, the online piece here. I believe there were a few editorial changes to bylaws that when I spoke with Michelle about this issue, she wanted changed. I'm not 100% sure if those are showing up on your end or not, but I can summarize those if you'd like.
Please.
Okay, give me just one moment to pull up the file.
It's in the air today. Something about digital files flying all over the place out of where they're supposed to be.
Yeah. Yesterday I have a folder on the server called draft documents where I keep a bunch of working stuff, and around 2 p.m. yesterday, it just vanished. I have no idea what happened to it. And then this morning I turned the computer on and it was back. So, thanks, IT.
Yep. We save our butts on a daily basis.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially these days. Let's see.
Well, while you're looking, I see Martha still has a hand up. I don't know if it's new or if it's from the past.
Yeah, this is about something on the voting. I support the change on the term limits, but it's something on package 19 about voting. So I'm happy to wait till Nick goes through whatever else he's got.
Yeah, let me. Okay, so the other changes based on my conversation with Michelle were in section 2 term in the first paragraph, deleting the last piece there that says or when a successor is appointed, so that all terms end on December 31st of whatever year it is that term ends. So this is just a consistency thing, so that all terms have end dates basically for all
So
advisory.
Nick, where's the language?
I don't have the packet page, but it's on the STPB bylaws. If you go to section
Okay.
2 term, it's about in the middle of the page. It's the first paragraph that starts, appointments to the STPB are for 3-year terms expiring on December 31st of the 3rd calendar year. And as proposed, that would be the end of the sentence.
Nick, that's on packet page 16.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've got it, and that's how it looks. So I'm not, I guess we must have the corrected version. So you're saying there was deleted language there.
There was a cut there, just a few words. And then the
Okay.
other addition is in the following page, section 3, vacancies, is adding some language that vacancies in the membership of the STPB shall be reported by STPB to the appropriate committee of the legislature and to the clerk of the legislature. And so the addition there was adding the clerk as a party to be notified. Those are the only 2 other modifications, and
Okay, so that's how. So as we're seeing the corrected language, we're not seeing the red line.
that's what it appears. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. That's good.
Are there any other comments about the bylaws, Martha? Any other questions?
Yeah, so my comment was on page, packet page 19, the top paragraph. Well, it starts on the previous page. Voting shall be by show of hands. A resolution or other business shall be considered adopted if a majority of votes of all duly authorized members of the STPB present at the meeting are cast in the affirmative. In no case shall a resolution be passed with less than 5 members voting in the affirmative. So the way I read it, there are 18 voting members. So this says that 5 people out of 18 could vote to approve something, to take action.
Yeah. So I think they've arrived at that number. So if you, the minimum you need for a quorum is 10 on STPB, that you have 18 voting members. So 10 is your quorum. And then if you had, I guess, 5 vote yes, 4 vote no, and 1 abstained, then the motion would pass.
I guess, I mean, as you know, we don't operate that way. We have a quorum, we need 8 for a quorum, but we also need 8 to take any action. So that just feels like a really low number of an 18-member board that can take an action. Does the board generally have trouble getting closer to 18 members? Is that an issue?
Rarely. The months when we have trouble getting quorum are typically August and December. This year accepted due to travel during those months. Otherwise we get pretty close to full attendance, and we have an attendance log. So I think, it varies. I can think of maybe 2 meetings in the last almost 3 years where we've had an issue getting close to quorum. But it's relatively rare.
Well, again, that seems like a really low number. 10 is actually the majority of your board. I mean, I guess I'm leery of just kind of, proposing to rewrite something like this on the fly. I wondered if other people also see it as a problem, or, should we just let it go? I think it's a problem.
And Martha, do you have language that you would like to see?
Well, does anybody else feel that this is an issue? I mean, I'll work on, I can do that, but if I'm the only one who thinks taking action with 5 out of 18 is fine, then okay.
I think that, to Martha's point, typically you have a majority vote.
At least the majority of your quorum.
Right. So I tend to agree with Martha that 5 cannot sufficiently represent the diversity of the opinions on the board. It's a curious phrasing. We can do one of two things. I mean, if those who are here right now, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 members present of the legislature. There's one of two directions. This could be amended and brought back to this committee. It could be provisionally passed through committee so that the full legislature can vote on it, recognizing that Martha's changes are appropriate, recommended changes. Do people have an opinion of the direction they would like to go on this?
Well, I wouldn't mind sending it back to STPB to take another look at it rather than us sort of dictate what to do.
Yeah, I will say STPB wants to have a closer look at the bylaws in the next year. There's other sections of the bylaws I think that they also want to consider revisions to. I don't think this one in particular had been flagged, or at least I don't believe it had been. But
Nick, let me ask you then, if they plan on making other adjustments anyway, is it time sensitive that the bylaws be updated right now and then re-updated sometime in the next couple months? That's
yes. So the issue with the term limit is that we'll have some folks expire off the board, and then we'll lose some valuable human talent on the board in 2021. So that issue is time sensitive. The other, they do have some other questions regarding the bylaws that are less time sensitive.
So as it's passing, again, this brings me back to my 2. If this is time sensitive, we have the option of saying that it is a fatal flaw and we'd like to make this amendment to support them to address their time sensitive need. And we put that through to the full legislature with an amendment at the full legislature. Or we delay this in committee and bring it back, which seems to not address their time-sensitive issue. So Martha, you have a comment?
Yeah, I guess I would, if we leave this at 5, I understand the time sensitivity about the term limits, absolutely. But if we leave this at 5, then they're going to go ahead and make changes to the whole bylaws with maybe only 5 people agreeing. I would, like on the fly right here, I would just move to amend that to make that number 9.
Is that friendly to the mover and the seconder? I think that was, I know Mike was one of them. I think it was,
Yes.
Was it Annie and Mike? Katrina?
I think it was Martha.
It was Martha and Mike.
Martha and Mike. So Martha is that second. I'm assuming that's friendly to you. That is friendly to Mike. So let's put it at 9. If they want to, Martha, given that they are going to be reviewing it anyway, and this is not the part of it that is important for them to get through, then they can adjust that back and give us a rationale for why they wanted it as 5, potentially. That is their recommendation. We can always keep it at 9. That can be a discussion, but I think this still allows us to move forward with the part that's most important to them. So,
right. But this also means that any subsequent changes they propose for the bylaws, they have to at least have half the board agree to it.
correct. And I can tell you in my experience, and Nick can speak to this as well, they deliberate at length on issues, and by the time it comes to a vote, they tend to have close to or a unanimous vote. So personally, I'm not worried about this, having been on the STPB for the last couple of years. Nick, would you agree with that?
Totally agree. I think they'll be fine with this. I mean, that 5 number was in there when I started. I assume it's been in there since 2012 or earlier when the last time the bylaws were changed. I don't think there's going to be any pushback on this. Not, that should be absolutely fine.
Great.
With the caveat that I really don't think it's, so if 10 is a quorum, then, 10 actually is the right number, but, let them talk about it.
All right, so with this one amendment to changing it from 9 to 5, or 5 to 9, are there any other comments or questions about the bylaws update? Seeing none, I'm going to do a roll call. Martha?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Anne?
Yes.
Henry?
Yes.
Thank you, dear. I hope you're feeling okay. And that is a unanimous vote. Thank you, everyone. And Nick, did you have any other updates that you would like to give?
Yeah, I do. And, with the, your permission, just a brief update on where we stand with the room tax discussion we've been having for the past few months here relating to the proposal to increase room tax for the small lodging properties. This is your Airbnb and, short-term rentals and bed and breakfasts with 10 or fewer rooms, which are currently have a tax rate of 3%. We were able to make contact with the staff at Airbnb. They are agreeable and have indicated they'll cooperate with a county-led effort to increase the rate for short-term rentals and the basically their and then make modifications as needed to their voluntary collection agreement. We're I should, by the time we have the next meeting here, have full update on that and have the results from our survey we did locally here, and we'll have kind of bring that item back up to the legislature for consideration to see how that unfolds. I think it is one of those things that as a staff level, I think that this would be there are some real benefits to considering this. And we'll talk through that when we have a little more time and have an item on the agenda to brief everybody on in an action item. So that'll likely be early in 2021, probably the January meeting. So that's the main update I have right now.
Great, thank you, Nick. That is actually wonderful news. That is a one hurdle logistically that we needed to cover. We certainly could not have moved forward, given that this is a voluntary agreement. To change a voluntary agreement without actually telling the people who have voluntarily agreed to it that you're changing it is probably not the best course of action. So we have corrected that through your diligence and through Katie's. And Jonathan, I see Jonathan here on the call as well. Jonathan, did you have anything you wanted to add to what Nick said about that negotiation?
No, Nick has it right. They indicated that they're willing to do that, and we are relying on them because they do much of the collection.
Thank you. So again, wonderful. That will now be able to move forward. Come January, I will not be here, of course, but I have all the confidence in the world that this committee will be able to move forward effectively on everything HED related, including this. So thank you, Nick, for your update on that. And moving forward to Ithaca Area Economic Development, IAED. I see that we do have Heather here. There are 2 items, A and B. As we noted, item C has been moved out of IAED's update because it was inappropriately put there. It is an independent issue. Heather, welcome. You have one very exciting presentation that I'm looking forward to, which is the enhanced energy policy. and then your monthly update. Welcome, Heather.
Thank you. Good morning. Thanks for having me here today. Let's see. I am going to go ahead and share my screen for my presentation. All right, can everyone see that? Okay. So today I'm going to give you a little bit of background and talk about some of the successes of the IDA's enhanced energy policy. I just wanted to give a shout out to my friend Cheryl Cinco, who climbed on the roof of the South Hill Business Campus to take this photo last fall. And I would like to just mention that, you know, several years ago, the IDA had adopted a policy that we would incentivize building renovations that included renewable energy efficiency projects. We did do one project several years ago when the South Hill Business Campus, which is a multi-tenant building, it's about 270,000 square feet, decided to put in a combined heat and power system. So this was the first and only of that policy. At the time, I think we were the only IDA, and we continue to be the only IDA that's really moving towards trying to incentivize more energy efficiency and renewable energy. So I think one of the first things that happened with the IDA in moving towards this energy policy and other policies that provide community benefit is the IDA went through and looked at its bylaws, looked at its mission statement, and changed its mission to really recognize the breadth and depth of projects and incentives that they were actually providing. So here's the mission statement of the IDA. The agency delivers economic incentives to business and industry to diversify and strengthen Tompkins County's tax base and enhance community vitality by supporting job creation, business and industrial development, as well as community revitalization. And the IDA strives to develop the local economy in an organized, sustainable, and environmentally beneficial manner. I've said it many times, I firmly believe that the IDA is an extremely powerful local tool to promote growth and development, but also other community benefits. So at the time, several years ago, we started to really look at the energy landscape. The state had set some goals. The county had set some ambitious emissions reduction goals. And the city and the town of Ithaca hired a sustainability coordinator to help them to look at ways not only to do that greenhouse gas emissions study, but to look at other ways that they could promote more energy efficiency and renewable energy. And we recognized at the time, and I still say it today, that the energy landscape is changing very quickly. Technologies are changing, policy is changing, and the ability to achieve goals is changing in a really drastic and fast way. So even though a month ago I thought I was up to date on all the policies, today things probably have changed a little bit. One of the other things that started to happen is that there was more and more public pressure to provide more community benefit in terms of energy and energy efficiency. So the IDA took heed, I think. There was a jointly funded study by the County Planning Department and TCAT at the time. We hired a local consultant, Tatum Engineering, which is very well known, not only in Ithaca, but in New York State and beyond, for the work that they have done in that field. And we set up a committee, very quickly identified some goals in looking at ways that we could incentivize more green energy. The goals of that first study were that any policy that was implemented really needed to be flexible. It needed to be affordable in that there was enough, and not too much incentive, but enough incentive to really make it financially feasible for projects to invest more significantly in renewable energy and energy efficiency measures. It needed to be impactful. 10% wasn't enough. We wanted, you know, some significant projects that we could hang our hat on that said, we've done a good job here. Not just 10%, but 30%, 40% better than what code requires today. Because after all, these new buildings will be, you know, in our building stock for decades to come. So why not make them as energy efficient as we possibly could? The goals needed to be reachable, achievable, and we felt that there needed to be a real clear compliance path. The administrative staff at the IDA are steeped in economic development every day. They're not necessarily engineers and didn't understand a lot of the complicated lingo. So over a course of several months, there was significant stakeholder outreach to understand what the issues were, what the possibilities were. Here's a list, I think, of most of the folks that are representatives that we spoke to during the course of this initial project to really understand where they were coming from and to help inform what might be possible. And with that came a study, and the first proposal for the IDA's enhanced energy policy. The goal was that projects that took advantage of this incentive would need to reduce their energy usage by an estimated 40% over what current building code requires. They would need to track all of their energy usage using EPA portfolio managers, so at least they could put in their energy usage at the end over a long term and really understand how efficient their buildings were and use that as a tool to make further decisions in the future. We required that all projects that had any residential component use all Energy Star rated appliances, and that there be a third-party compliance path. I have listed here some of those compliance paths. We recommended that going through the NYSERDA's new construction program or the multifamily new construction program and achieving tier 3, or a LEED 4.0 project with 17 energy points, so that developers were able to choose what program might work best for them. There is third-party compliance required for all of those programs, so that the IDA could sort of tag on to that. And so that was the recommendation. There was also and this was a recommendation that in this policy, if you did all these things and you were going to essentially reduce your energy usage by 40%, then there was an additional incentive to help offset those costs. The incentive we projected might have offset about a third of some of those costs, but it really depended on the scale of the project. There was also another component that you didn't need to go for that enhanced incentive, but for all projects coming to the IDA, they would be required to pick and choose from sort of a laundry list of different energy efficiency items to achieve a certain number of points. We found that at the IDA to be very problematic. Staff and developers and even the consultants that helped to design the program were confused by the numbers and the point system, and so that was not put into place at the time. So since that first policy was put forward, we've had several successes and potential future successes, projects that were approved under the policy that have not yet been completed. So Herald Square was a long time in the making. They had received initial approvals. They came back and got revised approvals as the project changed a little bit. And then they took a real hard look when we adopted this energy policy, and they said, yeah, we think we can make improvements in our building to meet the policy. They came back and were approved under this policy. The Library Place project, which is in the top right of your screen, had just started construction before COVID. It's on hiatus right now, but we were able to have them take a hard look at this policy as they were working on their project before they even came to the IDA, when they were in early design phase. And again, they were able to make changes, primarily using air source heat pumps rather than hooking up to the natural gas lines on the street. Boathouse Landing is a 16-unit housing, live, work community down on the waterfront. And this project is nearly zero energy. And they had been trying to make the financials work. They really wanted to use this novel, new panelized construction process that provided really thickly insulated walls. It was cost prohibitive, and they had gone back and forth. When we started talking about this policy, they went back and looked at the numbers and said, yep, now we can make it work. And then City Center, we at one point received a presentation at the IDA about City Center and all of the changes that they had to make working through the construction project to meet this energy incentive. Things like moving the mechanicals around so that they were inside the building rather than outside. They're much more efficient that way. That led to redesigning some of the hallways and some of the units in the building. They triple glazed a significant number of the windows and doors. And when they were nearing construction and they were fitting out the building, I got a call one day from the construction manager, and he said, you know, we needed to use all Energy Star appliances. And during part of our design phase, we changed the refrigerators in a number of the 2-bedroom units. And they were front opening, and they all came in, and they weren't Energy Star. We had to call Whirlpool and tell them to take them all back and change out all those refrigerators, because we knew that we had to meet that Energy Star compliance. Fun fact there. And then Green Star. I think Green Star was the most public process. You know, the developer that bought the existing building was going to do a gut renovation, and Green Star was going to be the tenant. The numbers were pretty thin, and the actual increase in value on that property was not very significant. We were estimating, based on a 7-year standard incentive, that they might receive about $130,000 in abated taxes over that 7-year period as we phased in the new taxes associated with that project, only $130,000. They looked at the enhanced energy incentive. It would have provided somewhere between $30,000 and $50,000 in additional incentive. They looked at what it would take to meet the requirements of the policy, and their estimates were upwards of $1 million. The numbers didn't work, but that public process, I think, really forced them to look at ways that they could say, hey, we're Green Star. We want to walk the walk and talk the talk, and we want this building to be as energy efficient as it possibly can be. They went out and raised money from their membership. I've been a card-carrying member of Green Star since I think the first week I moved to Ithaca. So I'm a little biased there, but I think that because of the IDA's policy, they really made some significant strides to make that building as energy efficient as they could. And then on your right here, we have City Harbor, which is still yet to break ground. They've committed to the policy as it was written at the time they were approved. You know, they're looking at a really novel use of effluent to heat and cool those buildings that I think could put Ithaca, you know, on the map once again as a leader in really creative ways to meet our energy efficiency goals. No one's done anything like this anywhere. So, you know, that won't be the first time, and it certainly won't be the last that Ithaca's leading the charge here. So in all, there were 6 projects that were approved that represent about $190 million in capital investment in Ithaca over the next several years. So that policy, I would say, you know, was not in place for very long. We saw some significant development during that time, and we're starting to see some successes. And with success comes, you know, other entities that want to emulate what we're doing. The city of Ithaca hired Tatum Engineering to help them design this new green building code, their green building policy, or what they're calling their stretch code. And they essentially based it off the IDA's policy. What they're looking at doing, and the policy has been a little bit slower to be adopted than we had anticipated because of COVID. It's still very much in a process of being approved. But what they're looking at is that applicants for building permits would need to meet requirements that would be 40% better than the existing building code between now and 2025. Well, that was what we were incentivizing projects to do. And then come 2025, for 5 years, they'll need to meet an 80% savings goal. And then in 2030, all building permits would be zero energy. So we recognized right away that, you know, the IDA did not want to be essentially incentivizing what the city and town of Ithaca would be requiring in their stretch code. So we once again engaged the services of Ian Shapiro at Tatum Engineering to help us to come up with a new policy and to look at some of the changes within the energy landscape that had happened in those, I think it was 3 or 4 years. And so we came at this with these recommendations that we needed to increase the energy savings from 40% to 80%, essentially the 2025 goals of the Ithaca stretch code. The cost of air source heat pumps for multifamily residential had gone down. So there was a belief that incentivizing multifamily projects, that incentive level could go down. For non-residential projects, it was still financially very difficult to make those projects work. And so there was a recommendation to increase those incentive levels a little bit. And also increase the incentive for smaller projects like Green Star, so that there was a little bit more incentive to help them meet some of those goals. And then to simplify the compliance path, we essentially took what the city was looking at. The city's policy has an easy path. In 2025, you have to get 12 points. That's the easy path. It's a laundry list. You have an engineer sign off and certify that you've done that. There's a standardized form that's in the new policy. There's also, it's not called the hard path, but it's the opposite of the easy path. There's another path that you can propose your own items in your building to meet a higher standard. We allowed for some of that and to create some flexibility in the process. The IDA did adopt this policy this year. And several projects are looking at this policy and they're thinking that they can meet this 80% goal. So some of the lessons learned through this process. Engaging stakeholders is really important to understand the landscape, to get valuable input, not only from the developers and the engineers, but from the folks that are working on those energy issues every day. We had a lot of conversation with a lot of people. Getting buy-in along the way as we were working on this project, I think was critical. When it came to the IDA, it was passed unanimously. And my other lesson learned is just try something. We wanted it to be perfect. We wanted to get it right the first time. We got it somewhat right. And then we went and, we were able to revise it. If we had waited initially and not put that policy in place the first time around, I think we would have lost significant opportunity to really impact that construction phase of those projects. That clear third-party compliance path makes it really simple to understand if a project has met the goals or not met the goals. And really just to be flexible in an environment that is rapidly changing. And that is my overview of the IDA's energy incentive policy. And I'd love to take questions on the policy in particular. And then you also have IAED's monthly report in your packet if there were questions on that as well.
Thank you so much, Heather. I think this is, it's, I know you've had this on the docket to present it, long overdue. Kudos to the IDA for this. I'm curious how many IDAs in the state have energy incentive programs. Do we know?
One, the Tompkins County IDA.
Beautiful. That's what I thought. So I just wanted to highlight that point. We have gotten in the past presentations from Nick Goldsmith about the town.
I'm on a Zoom meeting.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I appreciate in particular that you pointed out the growth from that green building policy to the IDA energy policy, the distinction between the two of them. I have heard them confused in the past, so I think that that's really important. So I appreciate that. I want to make sure that people have a chance for questions. I see Deborah and then Martha.
Well, Martha is a member and I'm not, so let's let her go first.
Right, Martha?
Go ahead, and whatever you have to say.
Yeah, I love this program, and I love the fact that you're aware of the changing goalposts as the city and town come closer to codifying their green building plan. So thank you for that. One gripe that I've had with the city is that it would be, I think, an easy A in the program to require that residential heating be electric and not use natural gas. Is there any way that the IDA's plan either requires that or could push for it?
You'll be happy to know that the revised policy that was adopted this year does require that in all residential buildings. And there's specific language about the types of air source heat pumps that can and cannot be used.
That's great, Heather. Thank you.
Wonderful. Martha?
Yeah, it's about how many other IDAs. Separately, not so separate, but in the CLCPA meetings that some of us have been going to, and particularly the local land use and local government panel, where they asked for us to, suggestions of how to make progress on these issues. I've cited the IDA and the idea that the policy has actually made builders do different things. And I think the adoption of heat pumps and geothermal has sort of become almost, I won't say automatic, but it seems, compared to a couple of years ago, you're not talking about something radical and where a developer is gonna get hives. I mean, they're now coming with, yes, this is what we're gonna do. You don't even have to ask them anymore. Happens now also with the Community Housing Development Fund project. So it really is an example of sort of pushing the envelope and helping people just try something out and realize, oh, this works. Also point out that Andrea Aguirre from the Energy Advisors Program said that BEA mostly works because when the project is in the city or was in this, where is an IDA project, they can put those incentives together with what BEA can offer. So it really has worked very, very well in collaboration with Andrea's efforts. So I do hope that we can continue along this line. And, I've been sort of mentioning this at the state meetings many times. People now are saying, oh, okay, yes, of course we have to have the IDAs get involved in energy solutions. And so thanks to Heather for leading the way on that.
Thank you. And I did present on this policy at a panel we've been doing these IDA Academy meetings twice a year with the IDAs and the Authority's Budget Office. And so I have in the past presented on our solar policy. Many of the IDAs have adopted small scale solar incentives similar to what our IDA has done. I handed that crown over to one of my counterparts in Steuben County, and this time was able to present on this energy policy. I've gotten a lot of positive responses from my counterparts and a lot of requests for our policy and for information. And I think it's just great to be able to share that information and to bring my counterparts along.
It's good to see our IDA take the lead on important issues. It's something that we can be proud of, for sure. I do want to note reiterate something that you said, Martha, that I do think is important to repeat. Very often when there are requirements that are added, there is not a collaborative, supportive system put in place to provide the education and the training to achieve the goals of the changes and requirements. And I think that the combination of what the county has done with the idea of increasing the requirements, but simultaneously investing in the BEA program that supported the developers and the engineers and the architects in achieving what we're demanding of them is a combination that is particularly important. So I do want to reiterate that. And I see Annie has her hand up as well. And Deborah, did you still have your hand up, or is that a new? Great, Annie.
Thank you, Anna. And Heather, thank you for the thorough report on that to go through it. I see a lot of other legislators on here, so that helps educate all of us on the program. some of my comments were already said, so I won't repeat them, but what Martha and Anna and Deborah said, I second. And this is a great program. And I like what you said about it, not having the role models for other counties and not being afraid to put ourselves out there and pave the path, and also not trying to have it be perfect, because then that can slow things down. So I like that you said, we're just gonna try it and being ready to, to pivot and to change and look at how this is evolving in relation to the city codes. So thank you very much.
And I don't see any other comments. Annie, if your hand is still up, that is from your previous one, I'm assuming. And the other item that Heather brought forward is her monthly report. Do you want to highlight a few of this for us, Heather, before we finish our conversation about IAED?
I think I can highlight, the IDAs were given the authority by the state this year to provide small grant and loan programs. And our IDA, at the suggestion of Martha Robertson, initially looked into and did set aside $100,000 to make $10,000 and below grants to child care centers to help support their costs for PPE and other renovations. The IDA did approve 4 grant requests last month, and I think there's 5 on the agenda to approve tomorrow. So if those are all approved, I think that'll be a total of about $73,000 and much needed funds to child care organizations throughout the county.
And I know you and I have spoken, but if you could give the updates with respect to the Ithaca and 430, 444 West State Street, with respect to the new affordable housing policy?
Sure, I could. Both of those projects, their applications were accepted and moved on to a public hearing at the last meeting. The public hearings for both of those projects are happening this afternoon. And I'll talk about the Ithaca first. The Ithaca has negotiated with the Ithaca Urban Renewal Agency to provide a maximum of 20, but a minimum of 10% of affordable units that would be set aside for households with incomes under at 80% or less of median income. They did that based on their financials. They felt like 10% was really what they could hit. The IDA's new housing policy does require that you provide 20% affordable units or pay a fee into the Community Housing Development Fund. In looking at that project, it was suggested that there be a hybrid, provide 10% of the units, pay the other half in lieu of providing those units on site. The IURA's requirement did say that, their return on investment had to be under, I think it was 8 or 9% on average over the first 5 years. And that was what sort of led them to that 10%. In any case, the applicant has requested that the IDA consider waiving that fee, that it would be $500,000. That will be up for discussion at the IDA's meeting tomorrow at 2:30, if anybody wanted to tune into that discussion. The other one, 430 to 444 West State Street, is a residential project that, again, the IDA looked at, accepted the application, moved it onto a public hearing. That public hearing is this afternoon. And they proposed paying the fee in lieu of providing the units on site. The fee would be $645,000. They have requested that the fee be paid in equal increments during the first 3 years of operation of the building. They have also asked the IDA to consider increasing their incentive amount. They are requesting that enhanced energy incentive. Under the first policy for all projects, they received 100% abatement on the new taxes for the first 3 years. Under the new policy that they're now coming in under, that was adopted earlier this year, it would be 100% in the first 2 years and 90% in year 3. They're asking for 100% rather than the 90% in year 3 to help with their cash flow and to increase their return on investment. So again, the IDA will be considering that tomorrow.
Great, thank you so much. And just for anybody who's watching, Heather presented today on the energy policy for the IDA. This is referring to the affordable housing policy that was recently adopted by the IDA. And that is a policy that requires 20% of the units be affordable based off of the national standard of what is identified as affordable. Those are HUD standards, if I understand correctly, 80% AMI or less. And
not just affordable, but families are income qualified, and there's a certification process every year. There needs to be somebody that can manage that process. Yes.
Correct. And if not, then it's $5,000 per unit that exists in the development that is to be put forward to the Community Housing Development Fund. Anybody who is familiar with the Housing and Economic Development Committee knows that that fund is a fund that is contributed to by Cornell, the county, the city, now Dryden, and if I recall correctly, the town of Ithaca as well. That fund is used to leverage local funding in many cases to garner significant support at the state level for low-income housing tax credits, and recently a shift towards supporting also smaller projects that some are going for abatements, but some are not. And it is just a straight up grant to that project to ensure affordable housing. An exceptional policy, I think, that has helped us develop a substantial amount of affordable housing. That is a new policy. I understand these two projects are looking to get waivers to that policy as it stands, and that will be discussed later today. So thank you, Heather, for that update. Did anybody have any other questions for Heather on her report? I do not see any. Thank you, Heather, so much for this information. And thank you for the work, and thank you for your presenting to the rest of the state on this policy. Hopefully others will adopt it ASAP, given the state energy goals are vast and rapidly approaching. Moving on to the highlight of the committee meeting, and I say this only because those resolutions that cause controversy tend to garner also the most engagement, and we have had many emails. A couple read.
Anna, Jason's on. I didn't know if we wanted to do that other resolution first and get that out of the way.
That would be wonderful. Thank you, Annie, for pointing that out. I'm keeping my eyes on many different things. So this brings back, we have temporarily on the table that was held for Jason's arrival. Jason has been diligently representing the county at the New York State Association of Counties, presenting on I don't know what. I'm sure something very meaningful. Jason, welcome. We have put this resolution on the table correcting for omitted 2019 transfers from the General Fund A to the Community Development CD Fund. It is a significant amount of money, so people wanted to just get further explanation of, why it was in the General Fund, when it was caught, the whole background, if you could give us a sense of it.
So I apologize. My schedule's mixed up. I thought this presentation was next week, and I made a mistake. It's this week. But we were presenting on our testing relationship and partnership with CHS, because people are asking a lot of questions. In fact, today I had a call with the Albany County Executive's Office. They want to know what we're doing because we're just killing it, no pun intended, with testing. So they wanted to know what we were doing. I'm sorry. So this resolution is really just to account for an error in last year. So every year we have a certain amount of interfund transfer from the general fund into the CD fund to support workforce development and the Career Center, and that was forgotten. We forgot to do it in 2019. They forgot to make the physical transfer. So as a result, the money rolled into fund balance, and therefore we have to correct it. We have to put this money back into that fund because oddly enough, workforce development is an enterprise fund. So without this funding there, they wouldn't have the funds to be able to function. So this is really just a transfer that was supposed to take place in 2019, takes place every year, but from an accounting perspective, we forgot to do the transfer last year.
Martha, question?
Yeah, it's just that, so now our fund balance is $255,000 less than we thought it was.
Well, or you could look at it from this perspective, it's actually $225,000 greater than it should have been.
Yeah, well, I'm not exactly comforted by that, but
Yeah.
Glass half full, Martha.
Sorry, I didn't mean to be coy, but yeah. Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't have happened. Had this transfer normally happened, you would have just had that much less of a growth in fund balance.
yeah, okay. Are there any other rocks we haven't looked under?
I don't know. I don't think so. You know, I talked to Rick real quick just to make sure I was understanding it right, and he's like, "Yeah, we just forgot to do it. You know, do the transfer." So we'll put a little note in our things to make sure we do by December of next year and make sure this happens. This usually happens every year, and I think for whatever reason it got overlooked.
Okay, and is this actually basically the money, and we get money from the Workforce Investment Act? Is that right? It's federal money?
Yeah, I don't know if this is federal money that comes in the general fund or not. I mean, I pulled up the budget real quick. Yeah, there is an interfund transfer. There is a lot of, all the Career Center is federal money, just so you know that. And I think this is supporting the Workforce Development Board. Yeah, I mean, so this is transferring to support the Workforce Development Board.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah, sorry about the confusion.
No worries. It happens. Thank you for catching it. Henry.
How was this discovered?
That I don't have an answer to. My guess is they probably went to do it this year and they're like, oops, we forgot to do it last year. I don't know. I have to ask Rick how we forgot how it happened. You know, I can ask him to get back to you.
Okay.
We'll make sure that doesn't happen again.
So just a slap on the wrist and then we'll move on.
I mean, it's you know, it's your money either way. It's just in a different fund, and you know, for whatever reason, something must have got overlooked, and we forgot to do the interfund transfer. Like I said, it doesn't happen. You know, we do a lot of these interfund transfers. You know, you do it for highway, you do it for a few other funds. So I'll talk to Rick and just say what happened, and it might just be something as simple as, listen, we overlooked it. Okay, we'll make sure we don't overlook it in the future.
Thank you, Jason. I see no more questions. Everybody ready to vote? I will do a roll call. Henry.
Yes.
Annie.
Yes.
Martha.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
And I am a yes. That is unanimous. Thank you, Jason. Did you have any other report that you wanted to bring to the committee?
I could just say, just so you know, if you wanted to look at it, it's in the budget book from 2020's budget book, section 4, page 114. That's where it shows where the interfund transfer usually happens. But I don't have anything else to update. I did just give an ISAC presentation with Frank last minute. He was available on our testing approach, what we've done, how we've partnered with CHS. A lot of good questions from there. There's another county, Lewis County, that talked about their approach as well, which is different because they have a county-owned hospital. And so we just talked a little bit about that, and we've gotten some questions throughout the past few weeks about our testing. Other than that, we're continuing to plug away.
Great. Thank you, Jason. Good luck. All right, moving on back to the resolution. This is the resolution changing the composition of the Tompkins County Industrial Development Agency to include 3 county legislators and a representative of organized labor. That's ID 9778. Can I have Annie moves? Can I have a second?
Yes, I will move.
Thanks, Henry. That is a second. All right, Annie as the mover, did you want to discuss this?
Sure, I'll discuss it a little bit. So I know there's been a lot of input from legislators about this. So I think that's always, I always appreciate that people are offering their insights, their feedback to make the resolution better. I think the crux of the resolution is, as has been said before, in many of the comments that we've had, is about changing the makeup of the IDA from the 4 legislators to 3 to help get a seat for labor. And anybody that knows me, that's somewhat of a mantra that I always say is, people need to have a seat at the table, as best we want to represent people whenever possible, they actually need to be there. And I feel really strongly about that. And so I'm actually glad. So I really want to make sure that it's not just the trades, the building trades, but all labor, because and again, it's not even just union, it's about all labor, because especially with the pandemic, we really need to make sure that if we're going to have the best chance we can, everybody needs to have a seat at the table. And we're down, I believe the latest stats that I heard, we're just under 10% unemployment, which is huge. So to have the best chance at economic recovery, IDA is one tool. It's not the only tool, of course. There's lots of tools, but that's an important tool. So I'm really glad that we're going to be looking at this today. And I wanted to thank all of the people who in the community who have given us feedback on this. And as far as I've seen, that all the feedback, the many emails that I've sorted through, is it's all been positive, that they also support this in the community. So thank you.
Thank you, Annie. And before continuing with discussion, I want to make sure we're discussing the same item. There is a resolution in the agenda. I have submitted an amended resolution, taking into consideration a lot of feedback from a lot of people, including members of this committee, members of the public, members of the larger legislature. And I would love to move those as an alternate to this. I don't know if that is friendly to the mover and seconder.
I think that's a good compromise, all the changes that you made. So yes, I would like to move that one, and that, or that's friendly to me to change that one.
It's also
Henry, is
friendly
that
to me too.
great? Thank you. And since we are on Zoom and there are many people listening, I am just going to read this so that we are all on the same page, and then continue on with conversation and questions and comments.
Can we have it screen shared? I can't.
Yep, that is fine if we do a screen share as well. So give me a second.
Good idea, Martha.
It's a great idea. So share screen. I think that should do it. Let me know. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, can you make can you make the whole resolution somehow show up?
I can scroll.
Okay, maybe go through
Tiny,
parts.
Annie.
I definitely don't want to make it tiny, so let me just read. Whereas, as stated in New York State's General Municipal Law, Section 858, the purposes of an industrial development agency are to promote a wide spectrum of economic development projects and to, quote, thereby advance the job opportunities, health, general prosperity, and economic welfare of the people of the state of New York, and to improve their recreation opportunities, prosperity, and standard of living. End quote. And whereas historically the membership of the board of the Tompkins County Industrial Development Agency, TCIDA, has consisted of 4 members appointed from the Tompkins County Legislature, 1 representative from the Board of Tompkins County Area Development, now known as the Ithaca Area Economic Development, and 2 at-large representatives. And whereas in years past, the New York State Public Authority Budget Office recommended as a best practice with respect to TCIDA board independence, that there not be a majority of board members who have a political or employment relationship to the government for whose purpose the public authority was created. And whereas in recognition of that recommendation, the TCIDA revised its bylaws in 2008 to state inter alia that its board shall consist of 3 members from the legislature, 1 elected official from a municipality, 1 elected official from a school board, and 1 at-large member. And whereas subsequently the Tompkins County attorney advised that those portions of the TCIDA's bylaws relating to TCIDA board membership are merely advisory to the Tompkins County Legislature, to which relevant New York State statutory law grants the final authority to determine the composition of the TCIDA board and to appoint its members, who serve at the pleasure of the legislature. And whereas at a meeting on January 6, 2009, the legislature, acting on the county attorney's advice, declined to change the composition of the TCIDA board to match the amended TCIDA board bylaws. And whereas in light of that counsel, the Tompkins County Legislature has continued to appoint 4 legislators to the TCIDA in recognition of the increased accountability to the voters in having elected representatives serving on the board of the agency and being involved in the decision-making process. And neither the composition of the TCIDA board nor the content of its bylaws have changed in this regard through the intervening years. And whereas maintaining a diverse range of community views is an essential element of balancing all of the interests that are involved with supporting economic development in Tompkins County, and whereas community voices have indicated in clear terms that the Tompkins County Legislature should reevaluate its position on the composition of the TCIDA, with a particular emphasis on supporting the creation of new living wage jobs and the preservation of existing living wage jobs, in order to assist in fostering a robust economic recovery from the detrimental impacts of the pandemic on the local job market and economy. And whereas in particular, maintaining a representative with labor experience and knowledge of local labor, including workforce retention and development potential on the TCIDA, would provide well-informed advice on topics such as construction-related issues, the status of building trade sectors of the local economy, and job growth potential as a result of development proposals to the TCIDA. Now, therefore, be it resolved on the recommendation of the Housing and Economic Development Committee that beginning with the 2021 term, that the legislature amend its current policy for TCIDA appointments to instead have the chair of the legislature appoint and the legislature approve the appointment of A, 3 legislators, B, 1 elected municipal official, C, 1 labor representative. Note that if they are selected from the construction labor industry, they be nominated collectively by the local building trades trade unions. D, 1 IAED nominated appointment, and E, 1 at-large member. That is the full resolution that is now on the table for discussion. I just wanted to make sure that we are all referring to the same resolution. So I have 3 people who would like to speak. First, I have Mike Sigler, then Martha as 2 sitting members of the committee, and then Deborah Dawson.
Hi, thanks, Anna. Yeah, no, I think this latest iteration is much better than where we started. So I think the discussion over the weekend was pretty good. I have a couple main concerns, and I kind of laid those out before as to what they were. I really don't have any problem with having a union person represented on the IDA. I always thought that was actually a pretty good idea. I don't really know why we've moved away kind of from the building trades person to just make it kind of a general union person. It was my understanding when all this started, and then that the Green Report came out too, which said the same thing, was that it really should be a building trades permit because they're going to give us some kind of insight into the construction projects. So I don't really know why we've kind of moved away from that. I mean, yeah, so you'll have somebody from maybe CSCA come on, or SEIU. I mean, both great unions, but I don't know what really kind of they would add to the building of jobs in the area. When we were talking earlier, I said, well, listen, I mean, if you're talking about job creation, you really should be talking to higher ed. You should have a Cornell representative on the IDA. If you're talking about other job creation outside of Cornell, you should have a healthcare person. That's another industry that's growing in the Northeast, and certainly growing in our area, with like at least 2 healthcare projects, building projects going in the next couple of years. And I mean, if I keep hearing the examples of other counties brought up, like our IDA is great compared to other counties, if you ask me. But listen, if that's what we're comparing to, I mean, Erie County, the union reps are Denise Abbott, who's AFL-CIO. You have Richard Lipsitz, who's the Western New York labor, which is also, the trades unions. Then if you go to Monroe County, you've got Troy Milne. He's at SMART local number 46. He's the sheet metal guy. And then you have, it's interesting, they actually have Anthony Milieu on there. Now, he's a real estate developer. And again, sure, if you want to build an IDA that's representative, it probably would be smart to have a developer on there, and you could appoint that through the IADA. So not the IAED. You could appoint them through that. So they would actually get to appoint 2 seats or something along those lines. But I mean, those are the kind of things I have a problem with. The only thing I would change really out of your resolution is that letter C. I mean, when I said that I wanted the labor union representative to be elected from the union membership, I want that just because I want to know this person actually represents the union people or wants to represent the membership. I didn't want just somebody. Listen, I was in the Writers Guild for a decade, right? When I was a writer in New York City, and then when I was a writer up here, I was in the union. But I didn't pretend like I represented the union membership. I mean, I represented Mike Sigler, and I was a member of the union. But I wouldn't have been comfortable serving on a board where I'm supposedly representing the entire membership. And that's kind of what this does. So I would say that should flow from anybody. If you're in the teachers union, yeah, the teachers union should put you forward, or the union should put you forward to kind of represent them. And that's the only reason I brought that up. And the other thing is, yeah, I mean, if you're the trade union, I don't know if you really should be all that politically active with certain things. Certainly, if there was a developer that was going to be represented on the IDA, that developer shouldn't be seeking benefits from the IDA. It's a very similar kind of conflict there. So I don't know how the unions are going to deal with that. I hope that they do, and that's something that maybe should be touched on. And that's what we're working on in this committee. So great. That's all I got to say. So
Yeah,
hopefully maybe we could get, I don't know, that C changed. I don't know.
Well, so Mike, I'm gonna respond to a few things you said, and then come back to you, see if you have an actual resolution or an amendment that you would like to make. But to address some of the questions that you brought up, one in particular, there are a few things that seemed contradictory. One is moving towards having it say building trades specifically, and one noting a concern that there would be a conflict of interest. So let me just address that second point. I reached out to Jonathan Wood, our attorney. I know Deborah did as well. And one of the points that was made was the reason that the labor groups that represent in other counties do not need to recuse themselves, except for very, very rarely, is that when proposals come to an IDA, they have not specified any labor groups specifically, or any businesses, or any individuals. So to recuse yourself would be recusing yourself from a future potential conflict of interest that currently doesn't exist. So that is the distinction for the labor, and that was also verified when labor representatives on other IDAs were conferred with. So I hope that puts that concern to rest. There were a lot of people that wrote in specifically about the fact that the goal of the IDA, as noted in the state 1968 law, as well as when the TCIDA was established, was to promote promote job growth, good paying job growth. And it was not specific to short-term construction jobs, but rather all jobs. In conferring with people in the public, taking their points into consideration, I think Martha's brought up this point as well. I think some others have also brought up this point, that having this acknowledge that the seat is a labor seat. But to address your concerns, I would note that the last whereas specifically says would provide well-informed advice on topics such as construction-related issues, the status of the building trade sectors of the local economy. Those are qualities and expertise that we would be looking for, as is explicitly stated in this resolution. So I think that it would address some of the concerns of people being selected for this seat who represent labor but do not have the actual focused expertise that we're looking for on this board. It does, there are no other unions that are explicitly mentioned in this resolution. The building trades are. And I think that is intentional, and acknowledges that not only they bring a very important expertise, but I think it's also really important to note that we can't assume that they can't speak to all of labor. That would be condescending. It does note that that they are a clear target, even if it's not exclusive. So I just wanted to point that out. And did you, in the light of those answers and clarifications, Mike, did you want to make an amendment to that C section?
Well, I would just pull out the fact that then it has to, if it's going to be elected for the building and trades person, it should be elected for everybody. Or if it's not going to be elected for everybody, then it shouldn't have to be elected for the building and trades. I don't know why we would differentiate between the building and trades unions and all the other unions.
Well, I mean, I hear you, and I guess that's a question for the group. The building trades is the only group of unions that we have in the county that are a collective and vote as collective and have an actual technical union group called the building trades. So this was a nod of respect to their process to not undermine and pit them against each other. So this was something requested, and it is something to, again, as I said, out of respect.
Okay.
The other thing that I did want to note, from a member of the unions in his letter, this is not a union or non-union issue. It is about supporting the people that live in our county, pay taxes in our community, raise their families in our community, shop and buy in our community, and volunteer in our community. And this says the labor representative appointee will be a voice for all local labor, and a constant advocate to support all workers living in Tompkins County. So I think that they've given us that message loud and clear.
Okay, now you answered all my questions.
Great. I see Martha and then Deborah.
I first want to acknowledge, I think this language of this substitute resolution was basically drafted by Rich John, who's I think on this call. Yeah, he's still on this call. Except that you've taken out a couple of paragraphs, which I would like to propose go back in. But on the last whereas, you changed something and I didn't quite get it all, like the last phrase or whatever, something about job growth potential. It seems to be the only change you actually made from Rich's version.
And I do want to clarify, I disagree. I think that this is a collaborative. There are many resolutions that were written by Deborah. So I see this as a joint effort. I don't see the need to specify that any one person is getting credit for any one thing.
Okay,
I think that
fine.
pointing out a group effort.
Can you just read the section that I asked you?
Them all.
I didn't get that.
Yeah, in this specifically, there is the C section And where it's specified a.
No, I got that. The last whereas, you say the status of the building trade sector of the local economy and something else about job growth. I didn't get that.
Job growth potential as a result of developing proposals to the TCIDA. That is in your email from late last night.
Yeah, okay. So you're deleting the issue of the use of local labor on Tompkins County IDA approved construction projects that rely on the building trades? Is that what you?
I have pasted this specifically into the chat so you can see the exact language.
Okay.
I will read it again. Whereas in particular, maintaining a representative with labor experience and knowledge of local labor, including workforce retention and development potential on the TCIDA would provide well-informed advice on topics such as construction-related issues, the status of the building trades sector of the local economy, and job growth potential as a result of development proposals to the TCIDA.
Okay. All right, fine. That sounds fine. I wanted to say I appreciate the comments that we got from the public, but I also want to say, and this is what I'm going to suggest and ask that the second paragraph, the second whereas that I had submitted in the resolution that you had from the weekend and I submitted last night be added, because I think there is a tremendous amount of misinformation about the IDA out there. And I think the resolution that's in our packet unfortunately contributes to that with conflating IAED. And I think that's why, there was there's some things in that, because IADE is not IDA, even though three of the initials are the same. So it's really important to contribute to the public's correct understanding of what the IDA is and what it has done. So I don't have this on my screen, but everybody has it from in their email. I would move to add the following paragraph. Whereas the Tompkins County Industrial Development Agency's projects over the past 5 years have made huge additions to the county's tax base, supported local businesses, increased the county's housing stock, created and preserved thousands of construction, often called temporary and permanent jobs, supported the use of local labor on construction of IDA approved projects, incentivized installation of 47 megawatts of solar energy, and incentivized new construction that uses renewable energy and is 80% more efficient than current building code. So I would offer that as a second whereas that just clarifies what the IDA has done and what our record is. Since this is the county legislature's IDA, I think we should go ahead and be confident enough to say what good it has done. So I hope there's a second to put that in, or preferably, I hope that would be favorable, seen as friendly.
So I'm going to check in with Annie and Henry. If this is friendly, we will add it. If not, we will discuss and vote on it. So can you share whether that is friendly?
I see that we have taken out so much more that was criticism or complimentary about the IDA. I see that this is stripped down, and so for me, it's not friendly.
I mean, we took out stuff about IAED, which was irrelevant. This is not about IAED.
Let's check first whether they see it as friendly or not friendly, and then we can discuss. Henry, is this friendly or not friendly?
I see it as not being friendly.
Okay, so there has been an amendment made. Is there a second? Martha, are you passing it as an amendment?
Yes.
So do I have a second for this amendment?
Sure, I'll second that.
So Mike is seconding it. It's now on the table for discussion. Martha, did you have anything else you wanted to add before we open it for discussion?
Yeah, I just, the history of a resolution, nobody's going to read that. They're going to read the resolution that we're done with. So if anybody has objection, if any of this is not true, I would, understand not being willing to include this. But all of this is true, and I think helps the public to understand what has already been done by the IDA with or without a labor representative. And I think it's only a positive that we should feel proud about including.
So I see hands up, but these were hands that were up before an amendment was proposed. So if you could raise your hand in the screen so I can call on people who want to comment on, I see Deborah's comment on this amendment specifically.
Yeah, thank you. This kind of falls into the category of we're not here to praise Caesar. You know, this has been kicking around for a week or so within the legislature. There were a lot of gripes about not being critical of the IDA or IAED. Similarly, I don't see any reason why we need to be singing hosannas of praise about the IDA. I do take issue with some of the things in your whereas, Martha, because it's questionable as to whether IDA has consistently enforced any kind of local labor policy, has created temporary construction jobs. We all know that a lot of these big construction jobs have been staffed by people who've been brought in from elsewhere. Now, we hear often from IDA staff that that's because there isn't enough skilled local labor to fill those jobs. One of the reasons I think that many of us want to see a labor representative on the board is because they're going to be the people who are best situated to address the availability and quality of skilled labor in the county. I mean, I could go on and on. I included a lot of my concerns in my original. You asked that they be taken out. They were. I do question the accuracy of everything in your whereas. I have other points I could address that Mike raised, but I'll save that for later. Anna, one thing I did want to mention is that it was my understanding from some email that Heather had sent us that in 2019, the bylaws were changed. So perhaps you could strike that language about the bylaws remaining the same from your original version. I see Heather has left, so we can't ask her. All I can say is I was surprised to learn that because the bylaws that are available publicly are the old bylaws from 2009 or 2008. This is all beside the point, but I don't want us passing a resolution that's incorrect in any way. Thank you.
So are you referring to the whereas in recognition of that recommendation, the TCID revised its bylaws in 2008 to state?
That was the last time that they revised it, but there's a later whereas, I don't have it right in front of me, that says since that time, neither the composition of the IDA nor the bylaws have changed. You need to take out that reference because Heather's email raises a question as to its accuracy, and unfortunately, she's not here to clarify that.
Yeah, that's true. The IDA bylaws were changed to make them consistent with the practice of the legislature.
Yeah, it was a change about the bylaws said something about we wanted members who had expertise and knowledge that they could offer to the process.
So it's neither the composition of the IDA board,
yeah,
that is true, but the content of the bylaws has changed, so that should be taken out. So
I'm changing it.
I don't know procedurally how we should deal with all of this, but I just didn't want us to be considering something that was inaccurate in any way.
yeah,
Right. So I'm addressing that by in that whereas, where it says, whereas in light of that council, the Tompkins County Legislature has continued to appoint 4 legislators to the TCIDA in recognition of the increased accountability to the voters in having elected representatives serving on the board of the agency and being involved in the decision-making process. And the composition of the TCIDA board has not changed in this regard through the intervening years.
Yes, that's, that addresses my concern about accuracy, and I'll stand on the comments that I made in response to Martha's motion to amend.
And Katrina, I am going to put that amended language of that whereas in the chat. So you have that.
And as it say, has not changed.
Board has not changed in this regard through the intervening years.
Right.
So
Okay.
that now removes, and that is correct. Heather did make that that point. Again, I have hands raised, blue hands raised, but those are referring to previous prior to this amendment. Did anyone else want to comment specifically on this addition that Martha put in? I have Rich's hand. Hello,
Anna,
Rich.
thank you for letting
Welcome.
me speak. Yeah, can you hear me now?
I can, absolutely. Welcome.
Thanks for letting me speak at your committee meeting.
Absolutely.
Just in comment, I don't want credit for this, for writing this resolution. I agree it's been through many iterations. Maybe nobody wants their fingerprints on it at this point. However, I will support it. I think this is a good thing. But I would speak to Martha's amendment that I think it's okay to say good things about the IDA. I think the whole quote from Shakespeare is, I come not to praise Caesar, but to bury him. I don't think we want to bury the IDA. I don't know why we would want to say bad things about the IDA. And in fact, you know, I'm certainly biased as I've served as the chair for the last couple of years, and I worked with Jim Dennis before. And we've struggled forward trying to have a comprehensive labor policy. We have not ignored this issue. We've tried to have a labor member in the past. We have solicited applications. This year, we added Ann Koreman to the IDA, and we formed a labor committee to specifically focus on this issue. And Ann Koreman was made the chair of that committee. And I believe they've held 2 meetings this year and are scheduled to meet this Friday. So it's not as if we've been ignoring the issue. We also instituted a labor tracking policy so that we knew the component of local labor and tried to get some data, because when we started looking at it, we didn't have any information. And in order to make good policy, we really needed to figure that out. So we've moved on that front. I think we're finally getting data. Even though the data gathering policy has been in place for a while, we don't have a lot of projects that have moved through the pipeline. So again, we've been trying. I'm not quite sure why it benefits us to fault the IDA and to criticize them, or to, I guess, not criticize, but not say anything good about them, because it has been a really positive force in our community in general, but also for local labor. There has been a voice for local labor there, and it's tried. So I would favor those amendments, and I'll stop talking. Thanks for letting me pitch in.
Absolutely, Rich, and thank you for all of your work on this. And I will intentionally say it is collective, so no one person gets pointed on. So you're good. You're part of a team, Rich. Annie, did I see your hand? Did you want to make a comment? I thought I did.
No.
Okay, sorry. Henry, did you? You're not on video, so.
Yeah, I want to make a comment after this amendment is decided on.
Okay, so I will just add my last comment. Rich, I hear you. They have done good things. And I understand Deborah's feeling about the shortcomings. I think that the conversation of the strengths or weaknesses of the IDA is what I have an issue with. I think that given the emotions around the IDA, and given that they are not unanimous, And given that we are really looking for something that can bring us all together, I think that the best way to move forward is to keep this resolution as focused and germane to the issues at hand. Having resolutions that have extraneous information on the merits or demerits of the organization itself, of the board itself, are not the point of this resolution. The point of this resolution is to say that this is the history of the membership of the board, and this is what we would currently like, full stop. Period, end of story. It keeps it clean, and it keeps the discussion of the disagreements or the desires or the hopes or the vision for the IDA simply out of the discussion. It does not detract from the truth of the merits. I, for one, want to make that very, very clear. I laud the merits of the IDA and the work that has been done. I appreciate the forward thinking of the energy policy, of the affordable housing policy. I think the IDA is progressive. I don't think, Annie being she's one of our colleagues on the legislature. As such, I don't think that she represents labor on the IDA. Labor, what is under discussion here is labor having a seat at the table. And I think that is where we should keep this resolution, to keep it just clean and simple. So that's my 2 cents about it, and I will stop there. Unless anyone has any other comments, I think that we should take a vote on this amendment, Martha and Deborah.
Yeah, since we're on the record here, I don't know what's not true in the language that I offered. I guess
nothing not true.
Deborah said,
in my mind, there's nothing not true.
Deborah said there was.
Yeah, I have problems with the whole idea that we've created all these wonderful, implicitly local construction jobs, because that's just not always been the case. I mean, one thing that I think you all need to realize is that there is a broad spectrum of opinion about how the IDA serves the local economy. And that spectrum of opinion also occurs within the legislators' community.
I'm looking at actual language here. Created and preserved thousands of construction and permanent jobs. Supported the use of local labor on construction of IDA-approved projects.
I just don't think that the IDA's record on local labor in construction or in permanent jobs, in terms of job creation, has been all that great, Martha. I guess there's just room for a difference of opinion. This language doesn't claim any specific number or percentage, and deliberately so. Deliberately so. I don't see how creating jobs for people who come in from out of town and don't spend their money locally serves our local economy. This is what I mean about there being a broad spectrum of opinion.
I'm just going to step back for a second. This is not a debate here. People can state their opinions in the interest of time. There is a question, Martha, that you had, whether the language is technically accurate. And I think that there's a difference. I would agree that language is technically accurate. Whether or not it accurately represents the sentiment of whether or not it reaches the goals that people would like is the issue. So let's maybe try to hear each other. And that's where there's a difference of opinion. So I would say that what I'm hearing is both are accurate. I think you both stated your opinions, and I hear you and respect that. I see Henry has a point. He has his hand raised.
Oh, no.
Okay, so I do not see any other hands raised. I would like to, again, in the interest of time, move on a vote for this amendment. Mike, did you have a comment you wanted to make on this amendment?
Yeah, it'll be quick. I just wanted to point out that I don't want to put too much pressure on this seat either. I mean, going forward, it's not like everything that comes in front of the IDA again is going to just be local labor. I mean, there's a reason certain jobs don't use local labor, like if we need a crane or high steel work. I mean, I appreciate what everybody's trying to do with this, and that's why I'm supportive of it. But I'll wait to see what the impact is going to be. Let's put it that way.
Yep. All right, so let's take a vote on this amendment. I have on the committee, Martha,
Yes.
Annie,
No.
Mike,
Yes.
Henry,
No,
and I'm a no. So that's 2 yeses, 3 noes on this amendment. So that brings us back to the original resolution. And again, I want to thank Martha, Rich, Deborah, Annie, Shauna, Mike, Dan. Everyone has contributed to this resolution. This, in the end of the day, has been a very collaborative effort. I do want to also acknowledge something that Rich has said multiple times, that the discussion of a labor seat on the IDA is actually a perennial discussion. It was brought up in earnest last year, as Rich pointed out. This is not a new discussion. And so I appreciate everyone bringing this back up. I appreciate the thoroughness. I appreciate the spiritedness of this. I think that I will leave it with hoping that this conversation continues. I think particularly the conversation Martha and Deborah, you were both having. That debate ultimately, I think, will lead to a stronger united understanding, but sometimes we have to go in deep and down to come back up and out on the other side. So, I think that even if it is not necessarily germane to the point of this resolution, it is still a very valuable conversation. So I did want to acknowledge and respect that. I see Martha and actually, I'm sorry, Henry, I said that we would come back to you after the amendment was voted on. So Henry and then Martha.
yes, I will support this resolution since I seconded it. I also want to say I don't feel this resolution goes far enough. I feel that the statute basically provides organized labor and a school board member. And those discussing has been used as a school board member. I would in fact change the resolution to say 2 legislators appointed, 1 labor seat and 1 school board seat. I'm not going to do it now, but I may do it in the future. That's all I have to say. Goodbye.
Thank you, Henry. And I appreciate, even though you're not feeling well, that you're here for this really important discussion. I very much appreciate it. Martha?
Yeah, my question is about, and I'm going to support this, but I think we have a little too much confusion about where this representative is going to come from and what the process is. For most boards, we have an application process. That's what we used in the past for the IDA, where people apply, and then the way it usually works is the legislature chair makes the nominations, then this committee approves, and the legislature. So this is a little bit fuzzy here. In particular, the building trades unions, there's the bricklayers and allied craft workers, there's the plumbers and steam fitters, there's the, Cortland, the Construction Trades Council. I don't know what this is in the resolution, it's a small b, small t, small u. So if there's an intention that it be a specific group that makes a nomination, I think we should spell that out. Otherwise, or leave it a little more vague. I don't know exactly what to suggest, or what people were intending.
Well, I can tell you the intent that I have is what I said to Mike earlier, to respect the fact that there's an actual legitimate building trades. It's the Tompkins County Cortland Building and Construction Trade Council. If you would like me to explicitly state that, as opposed to by the local building trade unions, that is fine. That is more out of respect for their process, that they have their own internal democratic process where they appoint people to represent them. It doesn't derail or circumvent the process of applicants applying for the seat and being considered, nominated by the chair of the legislature and put forward. It does not bypass that process. What this is saying is that acknowledging that they work collectively and we are respecting their internal process, that the recommendation or the application that comes from the building trades would be one that was nominated collectively. If we want to change that little b, little t, little c, we could replace it with by the Tompkins Cortland Building and Construction Trade Council, TCBCTC. Would that be preferable to this group?
I guess I'm not sure. It either should be one representative from the local construction or construction labor industry, end of sentence, or which I think would allow a variety of people, anybody from different organizations to apply, or specify that particular organization, I guess. And I don't see anybody from the unions here to tell us what the differences would be, what the implications would be.
So what you're suggesting is it either say one labor representative or it say a representative of the Tompkins Courtland Building and Construction Trade Council nominated collectively by that council. You're saying one or the other, but not both.
Yeah, and I'm a little shy about being so specific. Sort of preserve, if we could, maybe we should preserve the flexibility and let that be worked out. I guess that's all I'm saying is that, I see that obviously the Building Trades Council certainly seems a logical go-to to make sure that they put in their name, but I think we should perhaps reserve the right for some flexibility here.
I have Deborah and then Annie.
Well, the language of the resolution says that the chair of the legislature will appoint and the legislature will approve the appointment of the following people. So, I would assume that if for some reason the building trades organization said, we want you to put this bomb thrower on your IDA, we still have the flexibility to say, I don't think so.
Not if that line is in there.
No, because it's saying
that's the nomination process, not the selection process.
Correct.
But if you're worried about that, I don't have a problem just taking it out. And I will also say that if we're tracking the language of the state statute, it should be one representative of organized labor. But, I think we all understand this stuff. I don't know that we want to pick the words to death.
Well, of organized labor actually would respond to some of the comments that we did get in by email. If it's just, again, more flexible, of organized labor, which,
correct.
And in other economic times where we've had more manufacturing projects, for example, the Teamsters might have been a more logical union, for example. So I think for the sake of longevity, you just said one representative from organized labor.
One representative of organized labor, because that's what the statute says.
I would, you're not on the committee, I would propose that as an amendment. I think that's a better strategy.
Annie, is that friendly?
Yes.
Henry, is that friendly?
Yes.
All right. That has been changed to now say one representative of organized labor. Deborah, I see your hand up, but I think that you already spoke. That's probably an old I don't see any other hands. We have been discussing this for a while. Everybody has had a lot of input. As I said, this has been at this point quite collaborative. So I'm going to take a roll call. Mike,
Yes.
Annie,
Yes.
Martha,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
and I am a yes. So that resolution has passed and we'll move on to the full legislature. I will make sure that a copy of this gets to the IDA members so that they see what the final version is that has been approved through committee if they want to give input. And the other stakeholders that have been engaging in this process, including labor representatives who have reached out. So I will send this version to them. Thank you everyone so much for all of your determination and grit through this process. I think that we have come to a strong compromise with everyone. I am going to get back to our resolution. Our agenda. We do have some advisory board appointments. One of them, I'm glad that Rich John has stayed on the call. One of these appointments, I have been the DIA representative for the last couple of years. And Rich has put his name forward. We lost him actually just at the instant this came up. But the DIA, the Downtown Ithaca Alliance, is our business improvement district, and it is in his district. And when I reached out to him to see if he was interested in representing the legislature on the DIA, he was quite interested, which is wonderful for all of us. And his name has been put forward. That is one. On the STPB, Kelly Cartmill for lodging representative. Her term would expire on 12/31/23. Josh Friedman for arts and culture representative. Term expires 12/31/23. And those are the three that I have. And I would like to move those. I have Martha moving, Annie seconding. Any comments, questions? All right, so let's take a vote on that. Martha?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Annie?
Yes.
And Henry?
Yes.
All right, and I am a yes, so that is unanimous. And that is the last item on this very lengthy, but last of the housing and economic development. Oh, is there one that I missed, Katrina?
We had a resolution that was sent out yesterday about appointments to the IDA and TCDC Board of Directors.
All right, I saw you wrote a note about that. And then I looked for it and didn't see it. So did it come from you, Katrina?
Yes, it came out just about the same time as a Zoom link.
So 9:27 this morning. Is that when this one?
Yeah, it would have been yesterday.
Can you read those?
It's appointing Jeff Gorski for Ithaca area economic development representative and John Goodridge as a member at large. Both of their terms expire 12/31/22.
Great. And I do want to note John Guttridge is a developer on the IDA. Speaking Mike Sigler to a comment that you made earlier, having a developer on the IDA, and that was a recommendation for the at-large seat from IAED, from what I understand. So good thing we do have one right now. So we're balanced in that way. So this is John Guttridge, and I didn't hear the second one, Katrina. You cut out for me.
Jeff Gorski.
Yes, Jeff Gorski. Jeff Gorski is a member of IAED. This is filling the slot that is the IAED board seat. I would note that Jennifer Tavares has completed her second term. She's been on for 6 years, and that is the maximum number of years that a person can represent. So Jeff would be taking Jennifer Tavares' seat. And so I would add these to our list of appointments.
This is actually a separate resolution, Anna.
So Martha, are you moving this resolution?
Yeah, that's what now remember seeing that. And I think it's actually that there are the at-large members, including the IAED appointment, get the opportunity for 3 2-year terms. So John is at the end of a 2-year term. That's why he's being re-nominated. And Jennifer is at the end of her 3rd 2-year term.
Right, for her full 6 years. Correct. Correct. And I see Rich is back on. Rich, I see your hand
Yeah,
raised.
sorry, I bounced out there.
No worries. I was praising
thank
you
you
for
again
your
for-
stepping up for the DIA liaison position, and we lost you just then.
Okay, well, yes, I'm looking forward to that. I just wanted to say thank you again for letting me talk to your committee. John Guttridge has been a really active member of the IDA. He's very smart. He's shown up. He's done a really good job. I would be very happy to have him continue. And I've also known Jeff Gorski for many, many years. He is a longtime resident of our community. He's a CPA. He would add some really strong capabilities to our financial analysis. So I would support both of them as continuing or members.
Yeah, Jeff Gorski is also, I would note, he is the chair of the financial committee of IAED. That is absolutely his strength. Very even keel, very level-headed, very thoughtful, very thorough. So I do agree. So Rich, I'm assuming your hand is still up, but you've said everything you wanted to say. If I don't see any other hands, so I am going to take a roll call on this last resolution. Martha?
Anna, we still need a second.
We do. So Martha and Annie seconded. So now
Thank
let's
you.
do a roll call. It's been a long meeting. Martha?
Yes.
Annie?
Yes.
Henry recused himself, going back to bed. Mike?
Yes.
And I am a yes. So that is unanimous 4 with 1 recusal. And that is our last piece of business for the day. It is my last chair meeting of my tenure on the Tompkins County Legislature. It has been a pleasure working with all of you. And I look forward to seeing what you all do with this committee, housing and economic development, and in whatever form it takes in the next years to come. So thank you everyone for their patience, and for the public. It's been a pleasure serving as your chair of HED and serving on the legislature. And I call this meeting adjourned. Thank you everyone so much.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Katrina, and everybody.
Thank you, everyone.